really excited to talk to Mary today. And so without further delay, Mary, I'd like to just give you a minute or two. Go ahead and introduce yourself to those people who are watching.
Hi, I am Mary Lake. I am in Tennessee now. I was a stay-at-home mom for years and years and years, and then once my kids got back in school, I decided that I needed to go back to work. We have traveled everywhere from California to Ohio. So we've been here, there, and everywhere. So we know a lot of people in a lot of different states. The kids are older now, so they're in school, but now we homeschool. So not only am I working from home, I'm also trying to make sure that my kids are getting smart, which, is a struggle sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. That is, talk about a huge responsibility. Keep it up. You're an inspiration, Mary.
I just wanted to do something productive. And my first job that I actually got when my kids started back to school and I could actually get a job was a waitressing job. And I got fired after 5 weeks because I was called a chatty Cathy.
Oh. Yeah, so it seems insurance would be like a natural landing spot, right?
Yes. That seemed to be where I fit, because I like to talk, and I like to talk to people, which is kind of ironic because I don't really ever leave my house anymore. So all my conversations are, over the phone.
Yeah, absolutely. Mary, let's go ahead and start with the first question. So you talked about, you were a server or a waitress. You got fired because you were a chatty Cathy. So how did you actually get started in insurance?
Well, after I got fired, I went immediately into an Allstate agent's office and asked if they had a receptionist, because I didn't notice anybody up front, and I wanted a job. I wanted to work. And they didn't hire me because they were going through some sort of transition, which I didn't know at the time. So they said, come back in January and let's talk. All I was looking for was some sort of receptionist job. And whenever I went and talked to them, at the beginning of 2017, they asked me about, if I would be interested in a sales position, and talked to me about insurance. And I've always loved anything with numbers. I've loved accounting. I do my own books, and I've always been really kind of interested in kind of how the insurance world works, but never really knew the questions to ask. So that just presented itself. Okay, great. I've got plenty of time. I got a part-time job, at a mall doing retail. So obviously I like sales. And I studied for about 4 to 6 weeks, took my practice exam, and then took both my exams and passed the first time. So actually it's kind of great that we're doing this now, because 5 years ago this month is whenever I got licensed.
Oh, hey, congratulations on 5 years. That's awesome. That's really great. So you keep going. So
after that, that's whenever I started working, and I haven't stopped since.
Excellent. So you joined that agency, and you got licensed. How was the beginning of your career? If you can kind of take us back there, your first few months of even joining insurance. How long until you had your first quotes? What was your first sales call like? Tell us a little about that if you can remember.
Oh gosh. I learned a lot within the first few months, that you have to be a go-getter without being irritating to people. Because you have friends. You start with friends and their family. That's who you start with. And I was starting out with friends, and they were asking me all kinds of questions, and I was answering their concerns and trying to get their premiums down. But I made the mistake of constantly texting this one lady because I was trying so hard to make a sale. I was trying so hard. And she was like, I'm not interested, because basically I wouldn't leave her alone. I was trying to have the go-getter attitude without, giving people space. And that's basically what people want. I mean, they want somebody to take care of you, but they also want their space. So that was something that I definitely learned, because I mean, my first sale was basically just my family and not my friends, because your family is pretty easy typically. Um, they want to support you most of the time. Um, so I did learn that I have to be pushy without seeming too pushy.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a fine balance there, right? Like there are
Mhm.
plenty of agents I've spoken to where they say, "Look, I'm going to keep calling until somebody tells me no." And I mean, talk about a go-getter mindset, but I mean, it can be really frustrating for prospects when it's like, "Geez, hat tip to
Yeah,
the guy or gal for being like a hustler." But sometimes silence is a no. After like the 24th time of calling or texting,
right,
it's like maybe take the message after like 12 times, 15. Like
right,
there is a line where there's huge diminishing returns, or at least leave more time between the contact points, right?
right.
So
Yep.
when you got
And
started, it oh, I'm sorry. Did you have more on that topic?
no, no, go ahead.
Okay, great. So tell us a little bit about your agency where you started working, because it was an independent agency, right?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
perfect. Do you remember as when you became a producer at the office, more or less like how much premium were you writing each month? What was your close ratio? Anything like that?
Um, I mean, you've been in the insurance world. There are better months than others, because
Certainly.
whenever you get to the end of the year, you're talking about holidays, and not a lot of people, even though you're trying to convince them that they're saving money and that extra money could go to Christmas gifts, everybody's busy.
Yep.
Nobody cares about their insurance. Nobody. Um, I mean, I remember my first check. I was so excited, and it was $400, and I had made I had sold 2 or 3 policies, maybe one package and an auto. So I was really excited about that $400 that I made. That was my very first paycheck. And now, I mean, looking back at that now, I'm like, wow, I was excited about $400, and now I'm able to actually provide for my family and not have to worry about anything. And I've been on my own since July of 2018. So my if my kids want to go out to eat, I don't have to look at my budget and say, hey, we can't do that this week. I gotta wait till I get paid. And I mean, it's so nice, and especially being in a business where you're selling something that people actually need, like they have to have, rather
Yeah.
than doing the MLM kind of sales, and candles and makeup, and people support you the first time, but keeping up with that doesn't work. I've tried it.
Yeah. No, and you're absolutely right. There's a bunch of stuff that you said that I'd love to hit on, right? The small first check. I think pretty much any insurance agent has experienced that. And what's funny about it, like I remember mine was under $200. Really, really small. But even like getting the check, it simultaneously felt like, boy, that's not a lot. But it also felt like, yeah, but this is mine. Like I
Right.
this is like a commission check. I worked hard for this, and then watching it grow is so incredibly satisfying. And then and like you mentioned, where you can make money by helping people, they're going to have to buy it anyway, so why not provide excellent service, right? And just
Right.
blow them away with a really good experience. So let's go back, continuing in this trend, right? So you're at this independent office, you're writing business, you're growing your income. At what point did the light go off that you need to make a change?
Um, we were going through some changes just as a family with my husband's job, and one day he was just like, he asked me, because I would talk to him about my job and my clients, and he was like, what would it take for you to open up your own agency? And I just like was like, whoa, I don't know, because I've always worked for somebody. I've
Yeah.
never did my own thing, and this was a big step. I mean, this is a big industry. So it was really, really intimidating. And I was, the gears were starting to go, and I was like, well, I'm not going to be captive because I don't want just one option. And being independent already for a year and a half, I mean, there's no going from independent to captive because, I mean, probably 8 months from then, I would completely regret it. And I would want to try to transition back. And I knew that I needed to make a change that was going to be a lifetime change, not something where I'm going to hop around from company to company or aggregate to aggregate. And, I've experienced the workings of an aggregate here in Tennessee, and it wasn't a great experience. And it could be with that particular aggregate agency. I don't know. And luckily, I was just a producer and not an owner. So I didn't have to deal with the red tape and the contracts and anything like that. But I did know enough to know that it cost too much. And I didn't want to be in debt going with an aggregate. I knew that trying to get appointments on my own, I could probably get substandard contracts on my own and write
Right.
SR22s and DUIs and things like that. But I wanted to be able to, spread myself out further into, substandard market, standard market, and a luxurious market, what have you. So I get on the Google and I basically type in how to start your own independent agency, and Firefly was actually at the top. And so I clicked on it and read through it all. I mean, and then whenever I talked to you guys sent me the contract, and contracts, you don't really read word for word everything that's in it. But I knew from seeing an aggregate contract and them being stuck in a 15, 20, 25-year contract with them. And then if you try to get out early, you owe them so much money. I was like, I am reading this whole thing. And luckily, your guys' contract is not that long.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I'm trying to think if I think it's 12 pages if you don't include exhibits. Yeah. It's a
Right.
simple contract.
Yes. And I mean, I read that. I took probably a couple hours to like really read it and go over it and make sure if I had any questions, I wrote those questions down and asked the right ones. And, after talking to Hans and to Fritz, I was like, this is a no brainer. I mean, it wasn't like I was out shopping for a used car. I wasn't going to different dealerships. Once I found Firefly, that was it. I made the decision and I went with it.
Great. Well, and of course, we're thrilled with the result. But let's go. So I'm really interested to then focus on your onboarding experience, because it sounds like there's actually two different things going on with you particularly. And every agent experiences this, but you've already mentioned when you were talking to your husband, it was like, well, I've always worked for somebody else. So not only do you have to figure out how do you get the appointments, but then you've also got the tasks of like, how do I run a business, right? How do I do my own taxes?
Right.
And how do I, like what is all entailed in this? So let's first focus on the insurance side, right? So tell us a little bit about onboarding. Once you made the decision to join Firefly, do you remember what was it like how long did it take before you were getting appointments? What was your training like? And like how confident were? So let's start here. How long until you started getting appointments with carriers? Do you remember?
Okay. Progressive was my first one. And I think that was actually within a week. And then all the other ones just kind of started to trickle in. The thing with me that might not resonate with others, especially if they're new to the independent agent side, coming from an independent, I had a lot of the carriers that Firefly had. So the training for me was not difficult because I already had experience with the Raider. I already had experience with a lot of the top carriers, so I knew how the systems worked. I was trained by Sam, and I mean it went rather quick. And I think that I finally got all of my appointments. It seems like forever, especially whenever you're starting a business and you're ready to start making money. It seems like those 30 days drag.
Yeah.
But once I got that appointment with Progressive, I was like, you know what? I know Progressive. I went through the process because I think my mom was the first one that I wrote. whenever I came on in 2018. And because before she wouldn't let me quote her. She's like, I'm happy where I'm at. And that's what I'm talking. Families most of the time want to support you. And I had already been an agent for a year and a half. And she finally was like, okay, I guess I'll think about switching. You think that, whenever you're first getting into it, your mom would at least let you quote them the first month that you're working.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case. But she finally, knew that I knew what I was doing. So as soon as I got progressive, I went through the steps that I had to write the home, and I wrote 2 autos. That July that I had actually started before I had even gotten any other carriers, because that was the fastest. I'd say Progressive is probably one of the fastest carriers that gets you appointments.
Well, so what's funny about that is these days Progressive is actually the slowest. Like we're having to prep agents to say, hey, Progressive takes up to like 6 weeks. Now, in your case, I think because you already had some appointments, that it was really fast.
Yeah.
But like we're getting to the point on Firefly side where most carriers are done in like 3 weeks or less, and then you have a
Mm-hmm.
few that straggle, and then you've got Progressive way on the opposite end, which takes
Wow.
longer than ever now. So you came on at a different time, Mary.
Yeah.
Um, and what's wild, and I want to be really clear about this again, right? This is not meant to be a commercial for Firefly, but if anybody watching is thinking about joining an aggregator or a cluster, there's a lot of really great ones out there. And one question you should ask is, which carriers will I get a direct appointment with, and which ones will I have to work through like a brokerage? And I don't want to use too many names because I don't want to throw shade, but a lot of times they'll say, well, maybe you'll get 3 to 5 carriers in like the first month. And I just got off the phone with somebody, so I had a call yesterday where somebody had worked with an aggregator in October and had 0 direct appointments, and he was promised direct appointments back in October. And so just to do your appropriate research, whether it's Firefly or somebody else, make sure it's a really clear understanding of what your onboarding is going to look like. Otherwise, it can lead to a world of frustration. All right, so let's get to the business side a little bit. What was it like starting your own business? The taxes and getting all of your entity license, making sure everything was up and running so you could do business.
Well, I stayed a sole proprietor. You can get your EIN number and still be a sole proprietor, so you don't have to use your Social Security. So you can, and that's free. But I didn't start an LLC because I didn't have the money. And but after I figured out that I was going to do this all on my own, I got on the Google again. I was like, best website design, best website host. I went to GoDaddy and got my domain. I mean, I was like, where do I need to go? And Jordan and I, my husband, went out and we bought a computer. And by the way, we bought a Mac because we are Mac people.
Oh, nice.
Don't do it. Because I mean, I love my computer. The computer is great. But a lot of the carriers don't like Apple.
Yeah.
So it was a struggle, and I ended up having to get myself a laptop anyway, because I couldn't quote, or I could quote, but then there would be some other errors, or I couldn't. And it was just getting really frustrating. And as much as I love my Apple computers, and I wish that everyone would transition over to either PC or Mac, that's just not going to happen. So I've got a computer that I use to watch Netflix on.
Yeah, that's right. But I bet it's really good for Netflix. I mean, just
Yes,
lightning
it is
fast,
fantastic. So I'm a list person. Like I said before, I love numbers, so I love keeping track of all my expenses. Keeping track of all my mileage. Making sure that I'm taking every single deduction that I possibly can. So I mean, it's really worked. It's really worked out. Until I grow to where I'm having 1, 2, 3 employees, I'll probably continue to still do my bookkeeping. But I've always been very, very good with that. Not everybody is in that boat. So, I just make sure to keep track of all. I print out all my receipts. I don't just keep them in my email. I'm a paper person, so I print out all my receipts because sometimes, I'll accidentally delete an email and then I don't remember where I've spent money. So I just make sure to keep all receipts, paper and digital, because you just never know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's some good insight on running a business, right? For tax purposes and even how difficult it is. I think some agents I talk to, it's really overwhelming to get a business started, if they've never done it before. And then at the end of the day, it's like, oh, it's actually not that hard.
Yeah.
Like starting an LLC is kind of a pain. Getting an entity license, it takes a little bit of time. It's not hard, it takes time, but it's just not that. There's not that many steps to take care of, especially
Right.
if you work. I mean, honestly, I don't want to like toot our own horn, but if you work with Firefly, it's like we take care of the carriers, we take care of a lot of the accounting because the commission comes from us instead of coming from each individual carrier. So your taxes are easier. Like
Mhm.
it's not as much of a headache as a lot of agents expect. All right, let's get to some of the fun stuff. Okay, so you started your agency. Do you know? So first question: do you know how many carriers you have a direct appointment with today?
Uh, what is it? It's like 15 or so.
Yeah, I think it's about right. And I think you have smaller ones that might not even like Haggerty, right? I don't think anybody really counts Haggerty, but
Yeah,
I know
if
that.
I don't see it in my easy links, then it's kind of hard to count them. I mean, I've got some other ones that aren't in there too, that they're just kind of, if I can't get them with the carriers that are in easy links, then I have to remember, oh, I've got that carrier that I can go to.
Yep. And then so you have about 15 carriers. Do you know like a ballpark? What does your closing ratio look like?
My closing ratio, wish it was 100%,
We all
but we
do.
know that's not. um, I mean, I would say my closing ratio is probably about 75 to 80%.
Okay. So this, first of all, that's incredible. Second of all, this is our third interview. Okay. Evan Gibson was like at 80%. Brandon Brigana was also at like 80%. And now you're at 75 or 80%. I say this every time, which is, it's crazy that we're shooting at these types of numbers. 75%, even as an independent, isn't very typical. All right. So if anybody's watching and you're thinking, boy, I could close 80% of my leads. You could, you won't necessarily close all of them. So let's see.
Right.
It is awesome. But I mean, so seriously, Mary, that's fantastic. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your marketing strategy? Because one thing I do think is both true and important is that the source of your leads is actually a huge indicator of what your closing ratio will be. Okay, so
Right.
where do you get your leads, and how are you getting in front of people to quote?
Well, I would say the reason that I close a lot of my leads is because I don't buy leads. I
Mhm.
refuse. Because if I bought leads, then my ratio would go down because usually those lead sources, and I've tried, but I didn't try long enough to like bring my number down. Um, they're junk. They're old leads. They're people who weren't actually, and I had one lady said I wasn't actually shopping for car insurance. I was shopping to find a car to rent. And that lead came to me as somebody shopping for insurance. So trying
Huh.
to figure out where these leads are coming from. Because she said, this is the third phone call I've gotten for insurance. I was looking for a car to rent, not for insurance.
Great.
So um, so I was like, okay, I'm done trying to buy leads. So I have some mortgage lenders that I work with. I've got a couple real estate agents that I work with, and I've also got my captive agents that I work with because they can't write everything.
So another question that I have. So we've touched on number of carriers, your closing rate, where you're getting leads from, right? And it seems like you have a pretty good source of where those are coming from. Okay, I want to touch on something you mentioned at the beginning of the video, which is kind of like personal satisfaction, right? And like how starting this business has impacted you and your family. Could you touch on that a little bit? I mean, how has, since you've made the jump to owning your own agency, right, and going from, I mean, granted, you made $400 at your independent agency. I suspect your commission was maybe not quite that low, but something similar when you started with Firefly. So you made the jump, you had the faith to do it. How has that change impacted your life today?
I mean, it's tremendous. I mean, I think that my first commission check whenever I started my own, and I really don't want to count the policies that I sold, those 3 policies that I sold in July. Those are kind of moot because I knew I knew I was going to make $200. That that is a given. My first real check was like $1,600. I was like, okay, I can't live off this. I can pay a bill, but now I've got to start getting in there and doing my marketing, and I do the social media, and talking to all my referral partners. But for us, it has allowed us as a family to kind of just breathe. My husband was going through some transitions with his job too, so we both are business owners now, so we both work for ourselves, we both work from home. And I basically wanted to do something that was going to allow him to do something that he absolutely loved, because he was in construction for 10 years. He hated it. That was not his passion. And he wanted to get out. And now he is a music producer here in Nashville. And because of what I was doing, and we both worked really, really hard to get where we're at. And he has helped encourage me. And, now that we're both where we're at, and I'd say in July, I'm in year 4 with you guys, we're finally able to just breathe.
Yeah. Well, and congratulations, because there is a feeling where it just all of a sudden you hit this limit where it's like, it's kind of like I did it, or like I think the example you gave. So I love budgeting. My wife and I, we still have a budget. We know how much we're going to spend on various items throughout the month. There is something so incredibly satisfying about, like, if you have a long day and I don't want to make dinner and my wife doesn't want to make dinner, that it's like, hey, you know what? Let's just go get some pizza, or like,
Yeah.
let's go get some Popeyes or whatever. Even if it's just fast food, to be like, I don't need to sweat it out. I can handle $30, no problem, and we're going to be just fine. And to me, that is like one of the very first steps of becoming rich, is having it, or the feeling of becoming rich is you have freedom to you have some leeway in your budget to do some things as a family, and you're not thinking like, oh geez, I'm going to be paying for this next month,
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really happy that you guys have the ability to breathe and to have some freedom in your lives, especially as you're both business owners, and that can be intense. So major congratulations. All right, so the next question I have is, if you could give any advice to an agent, some of these agents that are watching, right? Some of them are thinking about making a jump to independence or starting their own agency right now. If you could give them any advice, what would it be?
Stop thinking about it and just do it, because you won't regret it. Um, I mean, starting your own business altogether is not an easy task. I mean, there were definitely some struggles and a lot of thought process. Um, but it's all worth it in the end. And you just have to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with the people that are going to encourage you the most. So I mean, you can come up with all sorts of plans, but if you don't surround yourself with the right people that are going to encourage you and drive you forward, you're not going to make it. So you have to make sure to, and you can't do it alone. You can't think that you can do it alone, because it's an impossibility. You can't do it alone. You have to make sure that you're getting your core group of people that are going to drive you.
Absolutely. That is totally true. So things that I would kind of reiterate. I think most agents, when you say make the jump, just do it, I would give a caveat of saying, if you're confident you can make it work. So a lot of times, like the indicator is, how do you feel at your current job? Because if you're the one who is like growing the agency and you're a producer, then maybe it is time to make the jump, right? If you're the one who's doing the marketing and you're doing the renewals and you know that you can do it on your own, then there could be a lot of potential to grow your own agency. Or if you're a captive agent and you're feeling like I am working my tail off to quote 100 people a month and I'm only closing 10, it could be another one of those opportunities where you say making the jump, it can have a pretty quick impact on not just your professional life, but your personal life as well. On the flip side, if you don't have that capacity to do those quotes, probably don't make the jump, because you'll make the jump and you're going to fail, right? Lots of agents fail. Thankfully, we're pretty selective about who we work with at Firefly. So our failure rate is much lower than the industry, but there's plenty of agents out there who have the gumption, they go for it, and then 2 years later they're, working for a bank or working for another agency. But I do agree, Mary, if there's an agent out there who is, kind of on the fence, but they're feeling they can make it work, there's a really good shot that you can. All right. So my next question is one that I enjoy asking is is there any software that you feel like if you didn't have it, you'd just be totally lost?
I mean, is it software that is included in with what I do? Because
I would say anything at all. So, I mean, not to put you on the spot, but I've seen you do like TikTok, so anything. I'm talking quoting, management, anything at all that you're doing,
marketing,
that you feel like
anything.
Huge. Yeah.
I mean, I would be lost without my CRM, my easy links. I just got Ring Central after one of our first webinars with Firefly. So I jumped from Grasshopper to Ring Central, and now I've got my Ring Central up on one screen. So, because I mean, I can spend all day trying to text, but what's great is my Ring Central is I can type, and I type a lot faster than I text.
Right.
So that's fantastic. I love social media. Would I be lost without it? Probably. I want to say no. I mean, the inside of me wants to say no, and that I don't need it.
Yeah.
But it's a great marketing tool. If social media went down for a week, a year, I'd be fine.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where I got a lot of my first leads, was getting onto group pages within Facebook and getting clients who I would just go on pages and ask the question, are you paying too much or who's paying too much for auto insurance? And I would get a lot of yeses. And so I would start reaching out to all those people, and I maybe got 2 or 3 quotes out of it, but then I kept trying it. And I think some of the other agents in town were starting to catch on. So then they would start leaving their information in the comments. So
nice.
I kind of nixed that idea, because I was trying to ask kind of a vague question without making it sound like I was the salesperson.
Yeah.
And then reaching out to them directly. But again, they started to catch on and started leaving their own information. So that was getting a little discouraging and really frustrating. So I kind of nixed that idea and started actually getting out of my shell and going to actually meet people who could help me grow my business, like my referral partners that I have. And they have helped me tremendously. I mean, I would say social media is a big part of what I do, because I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. But I try to implement personal stuff too, so that I don't seem so salesy.
Yeah. No,
people don't like salespeople.
They don't, right? And like there is this like defense mechanism where it's like, oh, I'm being sold. Absolutely not. I will not work with you, just because I'm not going to be like a sheep who falls for your advertising,
Right.
But on social media, you really can flip the script a little bit. So Mary, the last question I have for you is there anything that you're doing that, and I want to ask this in a way that it doesn't feel like you're throwing shade, right? But in this industry, sometimes there are opportunities that other agents aren't doing that you are, right? And you're thinking like, golly, why doesn't anybody do this? And so is there anything that you're doing that you feel like other agents might be dropping the ball on, or that they could do better, and that you're just crushing it with that specific thing? I know it's kind of a direct question. Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I would say and I don't want it to sound like, I've invited all these people over to my house for dinner, or I bake them cookies or bread all the time, but I'm going to say it's more of a personal relationship, more of a personal touch. And that could just be my personality because, you know, I like to talk to people and I like to get to know them. And something that we learned whenever I was going through, studying for insurance is that people who are your friend are less likely to sue you for a mistake than somebody that you don't know. Now, is that what drives me to make these my clients my friends? No, that's not what drives me to do that. I like to get to know people. I want to know about their family. So whenever they call, I can ask that, if they just had I know that they just had a baby, I can ask how their baby is. Or if they tell me that their grandma's in the hospital, I can ask them how their grandma is. Like um, I don't treat my clients as just a number. They'll text me, hey, can you do this? Sorry to bother you. That is, I hate whenever they either text me or call me and say, sorry to bother you. And I said, please don't think that you're bothering me. This is what I do. This is my job. You are not bothering me. This, it's not a bother.
Yeah.
I am more than likely to call you and say, hey, sorry to bother you, because I'm calling you after work. Or I might be calling you in the middle of your kids' basketball game. Sorry to bother you. Is there a better time? But quit calling me and saying, sorry to bother you. You're not a bother.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd try to be, whenever they say that, I tell them, please stop saying that. You are not bothering me. So I'm very personal with these people. And honestly, I mean, I've got over 300 clients that I could probably tell you something about each individual one. I could tell you who's going through a divorce. I could tell you who just had a baby. I could tell you whose baby just turned 2. I mean, I can tell you something about each person. I'm not going to, because that's just for me to know. But
Right.
but
But
personal touch. I don't think a lot of people get that from their agents.
I think to a large degree that's very true. Especially, I mean, like there are call centers that do a ton of sales, but I'm pretty sure they don't know anything truly about their clients. And so having that personal touch can set apart, like the local agent over any of the huge agencies out there that are just churning and burning policies. And I think having that personal touch, that's what can lead to more referrals. It does lead to a higher retention rate, and it makes it easier for renewals to happen because, like, let's say you have a client, they have a kid, and you know them. Oh, they turn 16. I mean, so you can be the one to even reach out and be like, hey, we got to make sure this kid gets on the policy, and,
Right.
and it helps an awful lot. Um, and so anyway, I really appreciate the insight. So,
Yeah.
Mary, thank you so much for your time and for joining us today. It was great chatting with you. But again, thanks so much for joining us. And Mary, thank you so much. Hope you all have
Yeah.
a great Friday.
Thanks. Have a great weekend, guys.
See ya.